Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan. I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. Sorry about our absence last week.
That's my fault.
yeah.
I had some wisdom teeth taken out and
Yeah.
could not talk. At least not effectively.
Blame wisdom teeth.
I get it. Some of you think I can't talk effectively anyways. And why are you here? Why are you still listening?
Well, this must be torture for you. I'm no eloquent person. Again, wisdom teeth are bad. And if you have them and you need to get them taken out like I do, you should probably do it. This is a reminder to me, to myself.
But now I can never RP a wizard.
Nope.
I'll fail every wisdom check.
That's true. You're all out.
All out.
All
I
out
asked
of
them they grind those down into magical powder, and they asked me to never come back.
You went to a weird dentist.
Yeah, they were like, we can't serve you or treat you anymore. I was like, well, can I at least have my teeth? And they were like, no, we need them.
For reasons.
They're selling their own powder.
Yep. Tooth powder.
Black market tooth powder.
Before we jump into the episode, of course, I want to take this moment at the top of the show to talk about our Patreon. We, of course, have a Patreon. You can check it out at patreon.com/atyourendstep. And I think what we're going to try to do is do a little bit of renovations on that here in the next month, I would say. We're trying to organize some new things behind the scenes and trying to weave that into what we offer on our Patreon for our supporters. And more on that to come in the future here. But we're pretty excited about it. And if you want to be ahead of the game and get in on some of this new exciting thing, definitely go ahead and join our Patreon. We really appreciate it. All of our patrons help us keep the lights on, keep the podcast running smoothly, and we couldn't do without you. So again, that is patreon.com/atyourendstep if you are interested in becoming a patron. All right. First, let's talk about the community segment and some things going on in the Magic the Gathering community. So first of all, we have some pretty spicy information coming in about War of the Spark, which of course is the next Magic the Gathering set coming out here in a few weeks, realistically. At the end of April is what pre-releases and stuff like that. Beginning of June is set release, actually.
Yeah, I assume we're going to get a ton of dumped information here at the end. There's a panel at the end of PAX that we're supposed to get on the 31st of March. So they'll do the Mythic Invitational and lead that directly into some of these PAX announcements. I'm assuming we're going to get a lot of cards at that point.
Yes.
And we'll sort of kick off our season.
And keep in mind, we are definitely going to get a lot of cards in this spoiler season in general, due to the fact that they are going to be spoiling the entire set before we get the actual card image gallery fully spoiled, which is unlike any other time that we've really had this going into it. Just for the sheer fact that they want to get as many cards out there and give people who are going to be participating in the next Mythic Championship as much information about what the limited format is realistically going to look like. But that's not really the information that we're going to be focusing on because there's going to be 36 Planeswalkers in this set.
Yeah, this is buck wild. So when we last recorded, I had said that Mark Rosewater sort of coyly said that we'll find out where Ashiok is in like a week. And then we already had the trailer with the stained glass windows, and they were like, every Planeswalker on a stained glass window will be on Ravnica for War of the Spark.
And we'll have new cards to represent them, not reprints.
All new.
All brand new cards.
And one per pack.
One
guaranteed a Planeswalker in a pack.
Per pack.
My wife is the kind of person who she is that person who's like, I never open a Planeswalker. So I told her, I was like, guess what?
That's for you.
I'm gonna hoard packs of War of the Spark, and every time you complain, I never open a Planeswalker, I'm just gonna hand you a pack of War of the Spark.
That's smart. That's just logical thinking right there. But this is I just don't know, like we need more context to really fully evaluate what this is going to look like. A lot of people are obviously assuming that this means that Planeswalkers are not going to be all mythic rare, which I think tracks. I feel like it's 100% slam dunk that we're at least going to have rare Planeswalkers.
If they're guaranteed in the pack, can you even call it a mythic rare?
Right, exactly. Now, I imagine this will function sort of like how flip cards have functioned, where they usually take away a common in the pack and then have a specific slot for your Planeswalker.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing. Yeah, because it's the same thing for Dominaria as well.
Yeah, same thing for Legends,
so
exactly. And I imagine that'll function that way, and I would bet money that we'll get an uncommon planeswalker or two.
I'm not happy about that, just because I know that our good friend and former host Dave will put it in his cube, and I'll hate it. So,
and a lot of people have said, well, how do you do that? How do you make an uncommon planeswalker? And I think you would just have to look at sagas to get the kind of idea of what the power level of these cards would be. Realistically, how I've seen a lot of people posit that you can look at it as like an enchantment that you can attack, something that has a fairly minor effect, or things that have only minus effects or minus tick downs on a planeswalker.
I think that's the one that makes most sense to me. Is it comes down with counters and takes down only. Yeah. Like, that makes sense.
But I like that. It's something that it may not be something that you activate every turn, which I think is compelling. Something that you have on the battlefield, and maybe it's an effect that is only good at sometimes, but you don't necessarily need to feel the constant pressure of having that activation hanging around or something like that. Not to mention, there's going to be cards that manipulate planeswalkers in this set. Not just like removing them, but potentially adding counters to your planeswalkers or something like that. There's going to be some sort of component in this set that definitely affects planeswalkers, just because it's so focused on them.
I'm assuming, again, we got historic and Dominaria. I would assume we're getting a planeswalker themed or planeswalker centric keyword ability. Would be my guess.
I mean that would seem more than likely.
To be fair, it could be historic even. Like they could go back to that well that quick. I don't know, but because even though it's on Ravnica, this one isn't going to be tied to the guilds,
right? So.
I think it's interesting. I will say one thing. Like, I do agree that from a design perspective, that would be interesting. Like, if like the planeswalkers were like uncommon, so minuses only this and that. I do think though that I'm interested to see it, because they have to be careful with this. These are their flagship cards, and these are their flagship characters. Like, looking at the list here, like again, the stained glass windows being there, but like characters we have not seen now in years. Ashiok being part of this. We saw Tamio fairly recently. Tybalt being part of this.
Tybalt.
Kiora. Soren, who was literally sitting on a rock the last time we saw him. I don't remember the name of our werewolf planeswalker.
Arlen Cord.
Yeah, who never had to do anything. We even get like the World Series. What's this guy's? Is it May? Is it this one?
Oh, I forget.
Was my Ling? Is that what it was? I can't remember which one was the blue one and the green one, but it has his little doggo with him. We haven't seen Narset since the end of the Khan storyline. And a lot of these planeswalkers, when they made their final exits the last time we saw them, like we didn't know where they were going. We didn't know where, like I said, Narset was going. We didn't know where, like Kiora was going.
Yeah.
We weren't sure what was going on here, and like they're not going to be able to fit all the story bits there. But I think if like you're like, hey, like if you're a fan of, I don't know, trying to think of like one of these planeswalkers that has a huge, like Nahiri, for example, who, again, Super Saiyan and brought a giant Emrakul to a plane, put Soren on a rock to watch it, and it was just like, see ya, I'm going to go do my thing now. And had been in a rock for 1,000 years.
Right.
Sorry, as my dog went barking a little bit. If you come back and you're like, well, here's uncommon Nahiri.
Sure, and
I think that's a tough sell for some people.
I definitely, and I would imagine that they are going to properly grade these
sure, and they're gonna have to. And there's some new planeswalkers that should we point out. So
yes.
We got the name of the one who's in the Ravnica novel.
Then.
So maybe those new planeswalkers who we don't have as much attachment to, those become our uncommons or fill those slots. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Tybalt fills that slot. But I think like for a lot of people, especially the way that they, you know how like when you listen to an album and you realize like the fourth song in a row they've done the fade out because like, and you go, oh, you guys don't know how to end songs, do you? Well, most of these planeswalkers have done that. The literal fade out of music where it's just like, I'm going to a new plane, bye. And then you're like, oh, they're back now, but they're common with one ability. So I know you love them and you're attached to them, but like they're garbage.
Yeah, and like that's obviously tough.
And I don't actually assume it's going to be like that, but I do think they have to be careful with what. I think we can all agree the nature of what a planeswalker is probably going to change again in some way. This feels like a mending style event is what we're leading up to. Like Bolus's plan is to do something to gain more power, which seems to be possibly siphoning off the sparks of other planeswalkers. And the last time we had like anything massive like that, we saw like the nature of planeswalkers change. So if they're underpowered and then we're told that's what a planeswalker is now to some extent, then that makes sense. But I just hope we don't get a bunch of either like uncommon means they do have like one ability and it's not really that interesting, or a bunch of planeswalker deck planeswalkers, which are also just not interesting. So.
I expect that we will get some of both of those categories, to be perfectly honest.
Probably true.
Because you have to figure, if there's going to be this many planeswalkers in the set, they aren't going to be good.
Well, that's true.
And some of them are going to be designed for limited. That they're going to be.
That's such a weird thing to say.
It is.
Design a planeswalker for limited.
But that's what it's going to be. And I think people need to set their expectations with that in mind. Is like, you're going to be opening one of these in every pack, which means that some of them are going to be limited powerhouses or limited role players. But that's it. And that's where the power level is going to be set with these. And I think if you could set your expectations that I can set my expectations that the amount of planeswalkers that are actually constructed playable in the set is going to be probably higher than average just due to volume, but that is due to volume, not due to them supercharging the set with a bunch of powerful cards.
One thing I do want to add on that, I know that Chase Andres this week broke down like planeswalkers and like what the pre-ordering has been on them, and I'm not a finance person, and that was premium. So, but I will say he did go through and like check off like how many planeswalkers like see play and what their prices are. And quite honestly, if you look at the bulk of the planeswalkers in standard, they are either at least for constructed purposes, like standard or modern constructed purposes, unplayable and bad.
Yeah,
most of them. Almost all of them.
I like the only one that breaks that mold is what, Teferi?
Well, in standard currently,
and the green one.
So Vivian Reed and Teferi, so see play currently in standard, and then both Vraskas see some play.
Fair enough.
And then beyond that, it's
just a huge drop off.
There's just like, it is very hit or miss. We even the ones that like we thought were going to be good, like Dovenbon, or not Dovenbon, but the Dovin from this set. I just not. So it's kind of interesting. So I don't know how much weaker they have to make them and even worry about standard.
That is very likely true. And to be fair, the planeswalkers that they have been making haven't been just aren't the kind of planeswalkers that when you really look at it and see like are truly sort of on that level. On the level of something like a Liliana the Last Hope, or even coming close to the level of like Teferi, which is fine. Like those are obviously like format all-stars. And I think that they've just been wary of putting planeswalkers that are just like removal, card advantage, relevant ultimate.
Sure.
And we harped on them a lot, to be honest,
not wrong.
for printing planeswalkers that were like that. And I'm glad that they are deciding to move away from that space and making more niche planeswalkers that aren't going to be the centerpieces of these decks. They're going to be role players or niche things that are more synergistic, that work better with other cards sort of supporting them rather than just being wholeheartedly the centerpiece of a deck.
Sure.
And you're going to see a lot more of that with this, a heck of a lot more of that. And I think like there's no clean way that they could really do this and make everyone happy. You're gonna have people that are gonna see their favorite planeswalker, and it be a unlimited planeswalker, and that's probably going to be disappointing. And yeah, you can definitely sidestep that by having them be the less premier planeswalkers. And I think for sure that we'll see like your Gatewatch 5, even though Anissa is currently not in the Gatewatch technically, but the Gatewatch 5 and Bolus, I think those are, you say bets on being mythic rares, to be perfectly honest, because they're still the centerpieces of the current storyline. Everything else will kind of fall wherever it will be. I'm interested to see like what they do with the other mythic rares in the set. If there are going to, theoretically, if we're going to have other mythic rares,
sure.
They could really be going hard in the paint and make 15 of these mythic rares and just be the planeswalkers being mythic rares. I don't know if that's where I would want to go with it, but they can do whatever they want.
Last thing I will say, it should be pointed out maybe some of the other candidates for less powered planeswalkers are planeswalkers that already have a card, specifically a strong card in standard. So like Teferi's second card probably could be a little underpowered. Karn's second card is probably not going to be as powered. So that's at least something. Like Jaya, they could make a better one. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, make a better Jaya. Something that I think is also important to definitely point out is what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh, what notable planeswalkers are missing? I think that
they made mention like Morrow. So Morrow had an article about where people are, where things are. Garrick was one of the ones that was major. Like, hey, we're coming back to him. Don't worry.
We haven't forgot about him.
But yeah, like Tezzeret not being on this is probably the most interesting one.
Tezeret's dead.
Not yet.
He will be. Okay, that's my best theory. That's my tinfoil hat theory.
He's full like Silumgar necklace style like for Bolas now.
Well, he is the planar portal.
Yeah, so
it's gonna be like Tezzeret's gonna be like, all right, I'm done with this portal, and Bolas is gonna be like, you're not done with anything.
Yeah, you are the portal,
and that's it. So I definitely think like that is a likelihood, a likely thing of that how that's going to shake down, because what other reason would there to be for him to, first of all, we know he's there, right?
Right. Well,
he has to be there, but for him to not get a card is a mystery that is seemingly ends in his death, which is, it's kind of disappointing, but also leaves opportunity for there to be more of a prominent, less artifact focused Dimir Walker, to be honest, which could be the new one from I forget his name, from the novella, Davriel Kane or whatever.
Okay, yeah, who's also one of the ones who's
right.
Here, so.
Or maybe we see Ashiok more often.
Sure.
But we've gotten a lot of Tezzeret in this, and it was cool to see him again. And then he was like, "I'm still doing artifact stuff." And we were like, That's cool. They're never going to do an artifact.
There's a good Tezzeret in the core set that sees no play because it's a 5-mana planeswalker.
Exactly. It's like
it's blue, and Teferi's like, but I'm here.
but I'm here. And so yeah, that's hopefully where we're leading with that. There's no oh dang. With 36 of them, it's hard to point out which ones aren't there.
No, there's a couple others who are not there, and that's important, but those are really probably the main.
Elspeth.
Oh, we know where she is, though.
Yeah, obviously.
We know where she is.
But I think a lot of people were hoping that like she would randomly be there.
There's certainly one that's missing that we all know has been missing for a number of years. That's Koth.
Oh, that's Koth. What is he doing?
He's not a Ravnica, so
Dang
whatever.
It. I really truthfully thought like 30. He's number one in my book. He's definitely got to be in the top 36. But this can only mean, and hopefully this is where we're going to be heading to within the next sort of big arc, is this happens, this War of the Spark happens, whatever the culmination of it is, I assume that we figure out a way to defeat Bolas to some degree, but this causes catastrophic events with planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Either a great a depowering, or half of them are dead or lose their spark, whatever. And then we can this mass catastrophe inspires Karn to take action against the Phyrexians, and then we get to blow up New Phyrexia.
Yeah, it's nice. That'd be a fun little arc.
I want that.
I don't blame you.
I understand it's going to be hard to go back to New Phyrexia because you really busted things up when we went there, constructed wise. Made some powerful free spells that are still wreaking havoc on Modern as we speak. But maybe don't do that next time, and then give us a good set. Just give us Koth back.
Yeah, there you go.
Just give us Koth back. I want a new red planeswalker that's like good, and I don't think we're gonna get 3 new red planeswalkers coming down the pike. I'm not excited about any of them. Like Chandra, all right, we get you. That's fine. Jaya could maybe get a good card.
Maybe it'd be nice. I'd like that.
It would be nice. It'd be nice because I think like she is as far as like on the kilometer. If we're gonna like, she's pretty high on that scale. As far as like story reasons go, so I wouldn't mind her going out with like a bang.
Definitely like the you kill her so that Chandra like feels an emotional reason to do something kind of character. So
and Tybalt, I really hope they make Tybalt mythic rare, and I hope he's like great, but that's not gonna happen. Let's be real, that's not gonna happen. They're probably gonna make him the worst planeswalker again, just for the meme factor. I am hesitantly excited about this. I
I
want
am
to see
too.
what it looks like. I want to see where they go with it. I'm glad that we're going to be getting cards from the set like next week, and hopefully it'll give us a slight bit of context, especially with the PAX panel. Like they're going to be able to talk about this at length, and we'll have a better context of what this is going to look like. I'm also really excited about the novel.
Also true.
I think this is a good set to have a novel with.
Yeah, I think so too. With 36 personalities,
so that you can actually, set up your story for all of this, because obviously that everyone's question is, why are they all here? So
I'm drawn there somehow.
I imagine that'll get answered here in the novel.
The Vorthos cast made a mention of like something drawing them there, and like all I could think of was the Flu Network, and like there's Ashiok who's like Theravnica. So
Yeah, I'm excited. I just assume that they know that there's really good cheeseburgers on Ravnica, and
that's it. Just like,
they all just got a
the
craving.
only cheeseburger in paradise in
Correct.
in the entire multiverse.
Right.
Is there?
All right. So let's move along here and start talking about Arena. We had a new state of the beta video and article go up, and we got something coming to the actual beta for Arena that I think a lot of people are pretty excited for, which are cosmetics. And as we know, where video games are at this point in time, cosmetics is a pretty huge deal in video games, to be perfectly honest. When you look at something like, a Fortnite or other sort of, Apex Legends, which is a new one that just came out, these free-to-play games that really are trying to get you to spend your money to get your, character, what have you, either decked out in a certain way or to look a certain way. And obviously we knew this was coming to Arena as well, and it makes sense when you really look at it, because in a lot of ways, a trading card game is just full of microtransactions. That's what booster packs are. But also, that's what card sleeves are. Like, there are these other incidental transactions that you can choose to make if you want to, not necessarily play the game, but potentially enjoy the game more. And some of the stuff that they have announced are sleeves, and some of the sleeves are like premium sleeves, which have like little animations that are associated with them, and kind of usually the ones so far that they've released since we're currently on Ravnica are tied into the guilds. There's also sort of basic sleeves, which are still guild themed but less flashy.
Mana symbols too.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know the whole slew of initial offerings, as it were. There's also going to be avatars, new avatars. So currently they have a bunch of free ones that you can select from, but they're going to introduce, I think, I know Angrath and someone else are going to be hitting and be available to be selectable and purchasable, and the other ones are unlocked via either gems or microtransactions or some other system, basically.
I cannot wait to buy my Aang avatar.
Yeah,
My little blue one.
Yep.
Navi. No, that's the fairy. I'll take that too.
yeah, sure. Sparky is who you're thinking of, right? Technically,
No, I'm not thinking. No, what's the blue people from Avatar?
they're the Navi.
I was right.
Yeah.
Okay, but isn't Navi also the?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess you got to say like Navi maybe
So
to
you're telling me
separate.
James Cameron chomping on that
Legend of Zelda flavor, yeah, 100%.
a couple 100 billion%.
The other thing that they're going to have are something called card styles, and this is to my approximation, this is sort of how close they're going to get to having foil cards in this game, and they are they have this sort of full art effect first and foremost, which is really, really cool, and they're sort of 3D, so you can actually have this sort of effect when you drag them around, that this art illustration that you're looking at has this depth to it. What do you think about that?
So I think the ones we've seen look gorgeous.
I agree with that.
They look a lot like full art cards we've seen in Magic, and as Morgan mentioned, the depth is nice. The one thing I guess I'm confused about, I'm reading it a couple times and reading it on Twitter. So it seems like you unlock individual cards with that animation, like with that style, as opposed to like sets or anything else. And that feels weird to me. Like, there's a tournament, was it next week, the Treasure Tournament, where you can win, is it like Luminous Bonds? You can win, like, an alternate art Luminous Bonds. And I was like, okay, but why?
Yeah, obviously some of these are going to be more desirable to have than other ones. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. And they're starting introducing a new sort of mastery system to the game as well. And this is sort of their improved initial player experience, where you can actually go through a sort of quest line to unlock the special card treatments as well. And then you can buy them, which some of them, depending on what what rarity you're buying, are expensive. And again, this doesn't unlock the card for you, so you can't buy this and actually get a card with it. It's just the special treatment to it.
Right.
But it will apply, as far as I understand, it will apply to every single card that you have as a playset.
I didn't mean it was only individual cards.
Yeah.
Like as in that sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like every version of that card can do that. I'm saying though that like having tournaments so you can unlock the card style for
right
blank card. That's I don't know. I don't blame them. Like it is something they can put in there that people will want more than likely and will pay money to compete for,
and
it costs them very little.
And they did make mention to point out that this is per illustration, not per card. So if there are multiple different illustrations of a card like Negate or Naturalize, these effects that get printed multiple times, but sometimes have different illustrations based on the set they're in, they're not all going to necessarily have. You might see one Negate with something like this. But the upside is anytime they would reprint that same art, that treatment will still go forward because it's based on the illustration.
Oh, that's interesting.
So something like the core set, you might luck into a lot of these because they use a lot of the same arts in core sets. There's no real reason to go out and get new arts for cards that are going to consistently reprint. So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out with this. I do think it's cool because people like to do this. People like to do this with their paper cards.
Yeah,
so,
of course. I want to say something like cheeky about it, but like I have my battle box, which I work very hard to foil and look for unique versions of cards, and we have friends with cubes who do the same thing. And heck, I think Comic Town is hosting a rarities and misprints con in June.
Yeah.
So I get that. I think this all makes sense. I will say like the pricing on some of the stuff seems like the first like something like 3,000 gems or something like that to buy an avatar. Was that it?
Yeah. So like I said, some of the pricing on it I think is a little rough. Is a little rough. So. But again, it's all your choice. So it's it's something that you don't necessarily have to do to play the game,
right? No, and that's important. Yeah, I agree with that. So.
I think the other cool thing that there's going to be practice matches as well, which I think is something that's sorely sort of missing from the game, where you can
also do that with Sparky.
Yeah, exactly. That is the bot as it were, so you can actually go in there and actually like test out decks, which I think is
no, he's not the bot. This is it. This is the thing they're putting Sparky in right now, and then when we actually get the spoilers for War of the Spark, we're gonna see like the little bit of like, wait, what's this? War of the Sparky?
No.
What is this? What is this?
But all this stuff is coming to the beta next week, so it's right around the corner. And actually looking at the card faces, a lot of them look like the lockets. The premium card backs actually look like the lockets from all of the current Ravnica sets. So I think like that's actually pretty nifty. And they have a state of the beta article that went up this week that has all this information. There are definitely a lot of cards that are going to get this premium treatment as well. Some are obviously more desirable than others.
Luminous Bonds.
Yeah, Luminous Bonds. Woo, well, that all-star right there. But again, you can get foils and all kind of crap cards around. So why would they restrict it, I guess? But that is pretty much it. I'm interested to see what the mastery system looks like in the mastery tree and the new player sort of rewards thing looks like. I think that's going to incentivize a lot of players that have been in since the initial like beta to actually go in there and like fill out their tree. And I would hope that they would have maybe some nifty rewards that show up. Who knows? But they are continuing to truck along with their beta. Next up, we do have the Challenger decks. The Challenger decks that are going to be releasing in April. We have all the deck lists, and these are all, I think, pretty good. For the most part, I think they're on par with the decks that we got last year.
I agree with that,
and I think that's where they definitely needed to be to still stay relevant and still be a good product. We've seen this time and time again where the actual these kind of products that come out and they wax and wane between year and year, and these seem to be still continuing to be good. And we have a mono white deck, which is United Assault. We have a mono red deck, which is Lightning Aggro. We have a green black deck, which is Deadly Discovery, and then a blue red deck, which is Arcane Tempo. And I mean, obviously, these decks give you definitely a lot of the commons and commons that you need to run these archetypes, which I think that is a big deal. To get these decks together, sometimes those are even like the harder cards to find, compared to your money mythics or rares or what have you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, just looking at things like Adanto Vanguard, which has been a card that's been a couple bucks in the white deck. Things like even like Wizard's Lightning in the red deck is a little bit tough. Any of the Explore creatures like Merfolk Branchwalker in the black green deck, and things like Chartacourse, which you get 4 of in the Arcane Tempo deck, right? Like just little bits of value that are good, and all these decks are designed so that they like. I think like you can look at like the White Weedy deck, for example, looks to be heavily based off of LSV's deck from that Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Which is nice, but the nice thing about those Azorius aggro or mono white aggro decks is that they have the same basic shell. So buying this, like you could buy this and in this deck out of the box be competitive at FNM, which is the way it's designed.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't take much to be able. All of a sudden, you have like 3 or 4 different builds of this deck that you could play, which I think is cool.
Right, like you made these I don't think there's any of the Luxodons in this.
That's true.
So maybe you have to buy some Luxodons, but those cards aren't currently necessarily expensive. Now, obviously, the effect you do see with these is the staples that aren't in these decks are the staples that get targeted by speculators and what have you, and do see a slight bump. Which it's just what happens with a market as it is.
Sure.
But even then, something like that, it's still a niche rare. It's not like it's you can really force that up very high, and a set that's still currently being printed as well. But I think some of the highlight. I think out of all of them, I do like the mono white deck the best. I think
getting 2 copies of History of Benalia.
That's a big deal.
2 copies of Legion's Landing, and even like a playset of like Benalish Marshall. Like, it's just nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. But, like, History of Benalia, if you look at it, like, it's a card that's been between $10 and $20 now for its entire life. And getting 2 of those for your $30, like, MSRP,
yeah.
Like, you're there. So
right. I mean, like, the mono red aggro deck is definitely pretty close as well. Some of the issue with these lists is they've gone kind of multiple different ways now.
Yeah.
Like you can say the thing with the mono white deck because it's gone into blue a little bit. With the mono red deck, it's gone into green a little bit. But even then, you could still again confidently play something like this, make a few modifications.
The creature suite is pretty spot on.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you would and you basically get a free Rekindling Phoenix.
Yeah,
some of these
100%.
lists don't even play that. It's unfortunate because we did get 8 good red spells in Ravnica Allegiance, in Light Up the Stage, and Skewer Their Critics. So that's a little bit awkward, but those aren't rares.
Yeah, those
at the
are
very
not
least.
That hard to get.
So hopefully, obviously, they come. We do say that sometimes at your local game store, the commons and uncommons can be the harder ones to get because people don't trade those in as often. But at the very least, you're not looking at a too high of a price point.
Sure.
And even something like Experimental Frenzy, I know that helps. It's going to have the same effect that History of Benalia has in the other decks, where you may need a full playset for those decks, but with them getting printed here, that's going to drive down the price.
Right.
So picking up the other 2 that you need is going to be a little bit more cost effective.
And again, 4 Chain Whirlers, 4 Runaway Steam Kid.
Yeah,
like, you're pretty set with what Red's doing right now.
Right, so. That's 8 rares. Like that's great. I think the one that it's probably the hardest to recommend might be the green black one.
Yeah,
It's tough because those decks have gone into blue for Hydroid
for
Crassus.
Hydrocrassus, and like getting your start here, you're going to be behind. You're right. You're going to be behind if you just play Golgari.
So I think that's a little tough. It is nice because you do get a couple of pretty good rare lands. You get 2 Woodland Cemetery and you get an Overgrown Tomb, which is not it's not nothing. You get a Vraska, which again is a very powerful card, but
and a card that's seen a $30 price tag. Not now, but it has seen it.
Or even like a couple of Jadelight Rangers, which are still
expensive card,
expensive. But I think just how the deck has shifted puts this list at a disadvantage because you'd have to, I think, to make this one really competitive, you would have to put a lot more money into it.
Agreed.
And then the one that I think is kind of in the middle is Arcane Tempo. This deck is actually great value because it has one card in it. It's called Arclight Phoenix, and Arclight Phoenix by itself is nearly the cost of the deck. So I think if you're starting at that price point, everything else is gravy. I don't know how good this deck necessarily is. I think this deck is missing a Steam Vents, to be perfectly honest. You do get Sulfur Falls, but I feel like Steam, I think
why you didn't get one Steam Vents is odd to me, especially when Steam Vents and Sulfur Falls. At least I know they don't technically go by card value, like whatever, but they are roughly the same cost currently.
Yeah,
so
that is 100% true. And I think some of the things that you do get in this deck are a little bit lacking, to be perfectly honest. Like you get the Arclight Phoenix, you only get one of them. You get 2 Nimizit, which is great. But some of the stuff that they put in here is just like you get a Mirari Conjecture, which
you get 2 Mirari Conjectures.
Oh, there's one on the side.
On the sideboard too. You do get a couple of Entrancing Melodies, which is at least interesting.
That's true. Again, still like a pretty narrow card that isn't expensive initially.
So this is the one out of all of these decks that shows you the sort of one caveat in this whole process is how they really aren't trying to step on their own toes with this. Like they want this to be a good introductory product, but like you need to then go buy the flagship sets. You need to go buy Guilds of Ravnica Allegiance to complete this.
And I think that's actually a really good statement, right? Because you don't have to go back.
That's the goal. Like you have to buy current sets to complete these, not the past sets so much. And I agree with you on that. If you take a look at this, it was mentioned by a friend of ours specifically that there's not even a single Ravnica Allegiance card in any of these things, and that should be telling.
And that's how the last ones were
100%.
built as well. They didn't have, I don't know what the current set was at that point in time, but they didn't have any of those cards either. I
think it was Ixalan. They didn't really have much in the way of Ixalan in it. Am I crazy? So because they had a ton of Kaladesh and Amonkhet.
Right.
So
because they're basing these off of a previous
event,
Pro Tour, the last Pro Tour.
There's no reason for them to like the fact that they put an Arclight Phoenix in here is kind of shocking to me, to be quite honest, because that card. If you look at Guilds of Ravnica, that card is a driver as far as like selling packs. And now you could buy 4 copies of this deck. And the way the Arclight Phoenix is tracking currently,
you'd be profiting.
You'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
But I think that's important for all of these, which makes it a little bit tough. But even again, not having an isn't or a sulfur. Wow. Try that again. Steam Vents in this is, I think, they look at how many of we already have 3 current set rares in here, like Arclight Phoenix and 2 Niv Mizzet, so. We're done.
Maybe that could very well be it. That is a great point in sort of how these are actually constructed. But yeah, I think the difficult part about this is, the card that you want to see in this that can't be in it. They can't have a deck like this is Teferi.
Yeah,
I think you can't put something like a Esper or even like a Jeskai control deck in here and it be something that you could suggest as being viable and it still not be ridiculous value.
I agree with you on that. And I think honestly, not even just Teferi being the real issue there, because I think they rate Mythics the same regardless of what they look like in Standard. You know what I mean? Vraska to them probably rates the same as History Benalia and Arclight Phoenix, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think also the issue with an Esper or a Jeskai is the mana base.
Yeah.
Like these decks are already using like Guild Gates. Like the blue red one is using one
Yeah.
of the Guild Gates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have these multiple of these have 4 of a Guild Gate, and then you have these rare lands that are so important. You just don't have very many of them. I don't know how you could construct a competent 3-color mana base and keep your price at the right point.
And not like blow out your entire like set of decks.
They do it in Commander products because they can cheat and use like every evolving wild effect,
Right.
and like common tap like or tap lands are fine there, those sort of things. But if you're saying this is competitive and standard out of the box, like I think it's a tough sell when you're like, but you do have to use these 4 Izzet Guild Gates,
right? And realistically, any blue-white based control deck, if it doesn't have 4 Teferis in it, it's not competitive. Like, it's not. It just isn't. You could cheat and maybe pay like 3 in there, but still, that's insane value.
I think like they could have done it like the blue red deck, that has the 1 Arclight Phoenix. You really want 4, but I think that was true of the last blue white control deck as well. The one from the Amonkhet block. They just got lucky there because they had Approach for the Second Sun as a win condition, because they only put a Kefnet was the mythic they put in that.
Yeah.
So they could have gone away with printing 1 here. I still do. I know a lot of people thought that this product is a failure because it didn't. These will do what you want them to do. At least 2 of them will definitely do what you want them to do.
I definitely can't agree with this being a failure. It's like I said, at least as comparable as last year's deck lists. It's very convenient that we do have a lot of decks that are monocolored and effective. I think like the most brutal misstep is like you could have theoretically had a mono blue deck in here, but you couldn't have based it on the data that we got.
Right.
The last Pro Tour, like
right.
the actual last Pro Tour.
Yeah, the last Pro Tour, the Alabogan one.
Yeah. So I think like that's rough. For sure, but
especially since by the time the next wave of these come out next year, you won't have the mono blue deck won't exist.
No.
So
no, not at all.
Because you won't have the Jin no more.
Nope.
But I do think they could have still printed a deck that had just like 1 Teferi and been okay with it. And I think that's a decision they have to weigh, because like again, they don't really take secondary market too much into account. They do, but they don't. But Teferi is a card that probably needs a valve somewhere, and now it doesn't look like it's going to get it. I'm also kind of surprised to not, maybe not because it hasn't seen as much play, but like Karn is another card that I could have seen like them maybe sneaking in somewhere, and they didn't.
Well, I mean, you could have snuck it into the black green deck and like even the sideboard.
But they put Vraska in there, so I.
But I
mean,
Karn to me screams more of a sideboard card.
I agree.
So
and maybe looking at these lists, like Karn was kind of a sideboard card in the mid range list, or a one of. So maybe it's just not as important. But I think when you look at it, like Teferi is the card that everyone said, please give us Teferi, and they said, hey, I don't think we can, and like that's frustrating.
For sure.
But I think when you look at the context of the decks, it makes sense. And
it kind of goes against the philosophy, right? Where you don't want people to go back and have to buy older sets, and Teferi's an older set still.
That's actually a great point.
Yeah, so I think when you say comparatively to like Arc like Phoenix, again, we can at least have the argument that but Arc like Phoenix is still in the set that because Dominaria just stopped printing.
Right. You can still go into either your local store or even a big box store and buy guilds and
correct, and they're still actively printing it.
Right.
But the same cannot be said for Dominaria currently. So
that makes me sad.
Yep.
I bought so many boxes of Dominaria.
Those Dominaria boxes are going up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's a desirable set. It's still a fun draft format, and it's a
great draft format.
People are still going to want to do it.
It's got some good value in it, and some of the foils in that set are going to age well.
Oh, for sure.
So,
but yeah, so those are the challenger decks. I would definitely endorse them. I think if you are like me and don't really have a whole lot of standard cards and want an easy on ramp to get back into it, some of those challenger decks are definitely the right way to go.
These are the perfect product for lapsed players for any reason. And I think before they talk about onboarding a lot, you know what I mean, like how you're going to get someone from like Arena to your local store, right? Well, this really helps it because you very much could have been playing like Mono Red on Arena for a while and decided, I'm going to go play this in paper, and then they're like, well, here, spend $30 and you'll have most of those cards. And I think for those people that'll even feel like Arena, if that makes sense, right? Where instead of like they can just kind of have the cards they want. So I think this product, even when it released last time, didn't have as easy of an onboard, which was I think some of the problems when they did the FNM decks even in the years past.
Yeah.
But now the onboard makes a lot more sense to me. Like, hey, Arena player, here's a deck that you are familiar with, and you can buy most of it and be competitive.
Yeah.
So,
next up is something that we're definitely not experts on, but is something that is changing and might affect you or your local game store, which are some WPN changes, which is Wizards Play Network or Wizard Play Network, whatever.
Wizards Play Network, yes.
And since we don't own a store or aren't really included in this, it is something that, again, we're not experts on, but definitely is, changing.
I can break down the main idea for
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
So, Wizards Play Network was set by tiers. Your store was in a tiered rating for what it was based on size, and that is what decided allocation of things like promotional items, what events you could run, how many pre-release packs you get. But they found that just the amount of stores that are in the Wizards Play Network, has ballooned so much that those 5 tiers don't really make sense for all of them. Some smaller stores can still do different numbers this way, and they wanted to try and refine it so that they could have a better, instead of you and this store are in this really broad tier together, but you aren't really like each other. Now they can do some other things. Stores have some new ways to show their growth, which I think is kind of interesting. Hey, we had a lot of players come out for this specific event or this kind of thing. And then promo allocation is going to shift based on that as well. They're releasing promo packs that stores will get. And this doesn't necessarily include F&M promos, which they'll still get, but the numbers of those might change, right? Mm-hmm. I think with Comic Town, because they specifically mentioned a store that has 100 players for F&M. If you've been to Comic Town on a fairly busy night, you'll have 120 people in that store.
Yeah. And that's across all events,
right.
they have standard, modern and limited.
So,
yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. Or Empire, a store that we've been associated with before up in Northeast Ohio, draw some pretty huge F&Ms.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that those bigger stores will get bonuses, but also the store that man, if you're just consistently crushing your events, you're selling out everything, you should also get bonuses as well. It may not be as big, but you're selling all your stock.
Yeah.
So I like this idea of that approach. Now, granted, we'll have to see how nuanced it really is once it's in place. But it did also imply that you're going to get some more unique promos. We've seen them start doing those recently with things like the lands for game days, the alternate art foils or full art foils for open houses. They're going to start changing how some of those come, and I think that's cool because that opens the door possibility for what kind of unique cards we can get.
Yeah.
So as a player, that's how it affects us, is we can get more cool cards if we go support our store. For stores, I don't know if it's. I don't know. Just like Morgan said, we're not experts. I don't know if this is actually more of a headache than it was before or what. But I'm hopeful that it's as positive as WotC makes it sound.
Yeah, because the promo card's going to be inside of packs of 4.
Yeah, packs of 4. So it's interesting how they're going to do that.
It's interesting. So something that they state is one of the slots is going to be a promo stamped rare or mythic rare from the most recent set. It could be any rare or mythic rare. Okay. Slot 2 is a promo stamped rare mythic rare from a short curated list. This will be from standard legal sets, and they will be hand selected by Magic Design Studio. The list will be public, so you know what your possibilities of getting.
Like treasure chests.
It does. You'll also see a curveball here and there. One such curveball will come with Core Set 2020. We'll show you when the card previews start, and you'll like it. I'm interested in that. What is that? Well, you got me peaked.
It's an actual curveball.
It's just a ball.
Wait, why are the cards bent? Well, they came wrapped with a baseball around the baseball.
Around the baseball. So slot 3 in these packs will be a promo stamped alternate art basic land, and then the 4th slot is going to be the promo slot. With each standard legal set, there will be a selection of special season-specific cards, just like F&M promos. Although the first season will be 5 cards, up from the usual 3. Most of the time, you can expect to see alternate frame cards you're accustomed to. But again, here and there, they'll throw in a curveball. I like this. I like that this is adding more sort of value. I don't know how these packs. I don't know if they're going to be distributed in the same way.
So no, the store. So you mean to the stores?
Yeah.
I don't know about that because that's.
But how the stores
going to are encouraged to get them out however they want to.
Interesting.
So it had the other one I saw had a bunch of questions well, what if I want to give it away on this day? They're okay, do it. They're your promos. So it's kind of interesting.
And then they said some promos will still be standalone cards. So something like a buy box promo will still be a buy box promo that you can only get for buying a box. But I think obviously this is the change that makes players interested, because I like weird curveball promos. We all like weird curveball promos. So I mean, obviously, the first time we're going to see this is. Of course, at 2020, so we'll just have to kind of wait for that to happen, which is a long time from now. Don't get me wrong, but put that on the back burner.
One last thing I think is interesting about this is that they are using two different methods to start counting how stores are doing. They call it tickets and engaged players. So every time someone buys an entry fee is a ticket, right? So like pre-releases, like you'll just get a ticket for each time somebody plays in pre-release. It's not tracking like. If you played in 2 pre-releases, that's 2 tickets. Doesn't matter. Engaged players, however, though, is going to start tracking how often a player plays at your store. So, like, if they looked on, they looked at their player base at Comic Town, and they was like, oh man, Mike here played in all of these events. That's an engaged player, and they say that engaged players are a better indication of quality versus quantity. So, if you go play a one-off at a store, that's a ticket, right? But that's not an engaged player.
Yeah.
But you'll get bonuses, like you'll get measurement bonuses, like if I go to a new place and then all of a sudden they see that I started coming back to that place, well, that's going to be an indication to WotC that like, oh hey, this store was able to engage players.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting. I don't know how they're going to keep looking at those metrics because that's a lot of data to look at.
I imagine they have to have something that's automated.
Some amount of it has to be
to be tracking that,
but it's interesting.
I think it's a smarter way to look at sort of stores and how well they're being successful. They also talked about WPM Premium, which is going to be a something that stores can qualify for depending on certain metrics, and it's definitely not just what you would think it would be. It is definitely the entire store experience, for lack of a better term. They have a video about it that you can find that kind of goes into more detail and kind of gives you some examples of, I would say, what the higher they're in Mox Boarding House when they're doing this video, which is probably the most high end Magic the Gathering like hobby store that I've ever seen, and they're like connected to like a restaurant and things like that. It's very like it's what maybe I wish I could play there. That's what I would aspire to play, but
sorry, sponsor daddies.
Yeah, sorry, sponsor daddy. Ooh. But I wonder how stringent they're going to be, because that is, I think it's tough to have like your video take place there and that be like what you're comparing it to, which is like
there's
perfection.
A lot of like subtext there, right?
Yeah, it's rough, but they are taking in a lot of factors when providing this to stores. So if your store has this, they are definitely a top tier store for Wizards, and I think that's an interesting video to watch, and then definitely something that I hope a lot of stores are watching as well, and I want that to be like a lot of stores' goal, because that would
certainly hope so.
It would improve a lot of things. I've played in some bad places.
Yeah, we have.
So,
Whew.
Moving on. So through the power of magic and editing, you guys won't know this, but I'm going to tell you that this podcast has been recorded over 2 days.
Don't show us how the sausage is made. I want to just enjoy the sausage.
But it's been a benefit, because we actually have a new community topic to talk about that we would have missed if we had finished the podcast yesterday. And it is a brand new game that is being released that is Magic adjacent. It's very close.
I want to say it's Magic branded, but it's not.
Not technically. It's called Valor's Reach, and this is a mobile game. It's created by a third-party studio that is not Wizards, so it's not being made by the Arena team or anything like that. This is a completely different game studio that's making this, and it is a different game than Magic. But if you are
still a card game, though,
it's still a collectible card game. Yes, that is the most important part. You are going to collect cards and build custom decks, and then play these decks against people. But as far as what it is, styling itself after seems to be more of a Hearthstone.
Yeah, it looks a lot like Hearthstone.
More of a Hearthstone, or even something like Eternal. Less Eternal, more Hearthstone sort of base. Judging from some of the images that we do have so far, it seems that we may have this is pure conjecture. We may have a similar system to how you gain mana based on some of the mock-ups. The player portraits have this little crystal bar next to them. It seems like, well, maybe that gets filled up every turn, and you get a new crystal every turn. A lot of the units look very similar to how the power and toughness and special abilities are displayed on units. It definitely feels a little copy and pasty. Just a bit.
Just an eensy
But
bit.
you know what? Let's be real here. Hearthstone was doing the copy and pasting beforehand,
Sure.
so I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna be just look at each other and be like, "I see you."
No, 100%. Speaking of copy and pasting, though, one thing that's awful in my opinion about this is the art style seems pretty copy and pasty too to Hearthstone.
Is bad,
And
in my opinion. I think this.
oh boy, they have so in the article that we have here is from Touch Arcade. They have some like concept art for like Chandra. No,
Yeah, that it's bad.
Okay, again, it's been compared to even Fortnite. Another friend of ours mentioned that, and they're right. I get it. I think it's sort of awkward when you have an IP, though, right? Like, and you're like, hey, here's Magic, let's do this. And I don't know. Like, there's a picture of a Gideon here, and that Gideon's left arm is as large as 3/4 of his body.
How happened to Gideon? Why is he like that?
He's a big boy Gideon.
He been juicing.
Does it mean that Gideon survives War of the Spark because they wouldn't use a dead man as their front logo for this?
I guess. But see, here's the wild thing, right?
Is this where they are?
No. So here's the wild thing.
Things are?
This you could. They're going to release this. It's going to be called Valor's Reach. I don't know if it'll have anything related to Magic unless it's in the fine print. Like, obviously, they're in the terms and conditions and stuff like that. It's going to say like Magic the Gathering because these are Magic the Gathering characters, so that they obviously have to tie it back to WotC at some point in time. But how closely related is this going to be?
I mean, the picture we have here shows me cards called Elite Vanguard,
Sure,
Leonin Healer, and Chapelgeist. Leonin is a Magic-specific race.
Sure, but it's also not a hard concept to grasp
Well, no, cat
either.
people. I'm aware. Okay, I get it.
It's one of them Catman.
Wait, Loxodons are mushroom people? Is that what it is? But they're going to try really hard not to put the name Magic on it, but they're using Magic IP characters, and the name is
they're using Magic symbols.
And Valor's Reach, is literally a place you said in Battle Bond. Like,
correct, right? In the Battle Bond plane, yes, there's something called Valor's Reach.
Let's move on from what this is because we don't really know until we see it in action.
I have no idea. That's true.
You really want to talk about this because of its implications, and I thought that was really interesting. So tell me what you think the implications of this is.
So there's no confirmation of this, of course, but I think the biggest
implication literally.
I'm just saying. Just covering myself. The biggest implication of this is that it's going to be a very long time before we see Magic Arena come to specifically mobile, specifically your phone.
Right.
Just for the sheer fact that if Arena were to come out, it would eat this thing's lunch, and Magic and Wizards is not going to, tell a studio, and no studio is going to sign on to build something like this for the mobile market, and then turn around and have Wizards be like, "Hey, Arena's going to come out in a year," because why would you do this as a video game studio? Why would you make that investment into building this product only to have it completely obliterated by Magic Arena?
No matter what, Arena will never be on an iPhone, so
right, exactly.
So you're okay with that?
So they're if I were the studio, right? If I were doing this, and Wizards of the Coast came to my studio and were like, "Hey, we want you to build a collectible card game that's going to use Magic IP in some degree. The card game is going to be different, but we still want it to be Magic related, through one way or another." If I were to sign that contract, I'd be like, "You guys can't release Arena on mobile for 2 years or for a year," or I would have something in a contract that says, "You guys aren't going to eat our lunch." And I think it's not hard to get to that conclusion if you have a basic understanding of like business. And I think that while this is obviously different, it's going to be different than Magic, just by the images that made.
Enough.
Huh?
I don't think it's different enough. Here's this card game, this collectible
Right.
card game,
But
that uses characters you know from this other card game.
exactly.
So yeah, 100%.
And no one's going to want. This is going to have a different. These are going to have different cards. Like they're not. You're not going to be able to like get cards from this and they translate over to Arena. Like that's not how this is going to work.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
So basically, you're going to have to be cultivating a completely separate card library through this game, and you can't do that if Arena is around the corner and people are just going to wait for that because no one's going to want this game if Arena is coming to the phones around the corner. I think where the one thing that this has going for it is this game is very vertically it's not horizontal. It's very upright. You can play it with one hand, and that's the design of it. That's the goal of it, which I think means that it's not going to be a good game for tablets.
Sure.
So I do think that when you look at Arena coming to tablets, it's a lot more
likely that's
that would be the case of what they do. I still think phones is potentially an impossibility, which is unfortunate, or a very, 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 very long way off. And when people say, well, Hearthstone's on the phone, or Eternal is on the phone, the real reason those games can be on such a small screen is because they limit how many things you can have on your battlefield, which Magic does not. And as we've seen, if you've seen pictures of Arena, the sky's the limit, and there's just tokens everywhere on those things. And on a computer screen, it's hard to navigate those board states. You can't minimize that onto like even the largest phone, even something like a Note 9 or something like that. Like it's still going to be incredibly hard to manage. And as long as Magic still has that being in the rule set, which I don't see that changing anytime soon. They're not going to be like, well, actually, we're going to implement this to stop these board states from getting wild. Then it's going to be very hard for you to have that in such a small screen.
I do, and I think those are all good points. So I want to get to them. I do think there's at least room to consider the other side, which is we've talked about how WotC has moved pretty fast in like the last 5-6 months because the beta did so well.
Yeah,
and functionally, Arena's done really, really well. I think like if you were anticipating like the kind of crashes we've had with Moto, Arena really hasn't had that. It's had its bugs, but like we've had that like, oh my gosh, there's something blow it up wrong with it, and it got so popular, moved so fast. We've seen that like while it started to come together, I think Mythic Championship 1 really started to bring it together as to what it's going to look like, and we'll see more with the Mythic Invitational as well here in a few weeks. But I do wonder if WotC, like, because this game, how long do you think this game's been in development?
I would be surprised because they're already going to.
We're going to beta next week.
Correct.
In certain parts of the world.
I think
Norway, the Norwegian regions. I don't know words.
Yes. So I would say that this probably was being built in tandem with Arena at the very least.
So I wonder if they themselves because I assume there is some sort of contract like that, but I wonder if WotC thought has now looked at this and gone like, well, okay, that kind of stinks because we are moving faster than we thought we were going to. But here's Valor's Reach. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's going to be something I'll really look at. I mean, I don't play a lot of mobile games like that. I'm like a word search kind of guy,
like one of them Sudokus or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with a Pokemon. Don't get me wrong. I go with the Pokemon.
Yeah, we Pokemon Go pretty regularly. So. I think that. When you take a look at something like Arena and something like this, and you have to keep in mind a proper expectation for timelines. So I'm actually going to compare this to Hearthstone because I think that is the closest approximation to a timeline. So right now we are not out of beta for Arena, and I don't know when we're going to be out of beta for Arena at this point in time. When Hearthstone was pushed out of beta, it was released on Windows and OS X, so Windows and Mac computers. About a month later, less than a month later, I guess technically, they had their first iPad release, basically. So realistically, we don't have any beta client for the Mac, and I don't expect them to have something a month later for iPad. And when you look at phones, it wasn't until over a year later.
Interesting.
Where they actually had it on phones. And again, we're not even out of beta yet. And this is after release for Hearthstone. So with a company that is as technology forward and built a game for specifically the digital marketplace, for them to have that kind of turnaround time, I would probably add 6 months to Magic's, and like 6 months after we're out of beta.
Interesting.
Honestly, I really think that they could get a lot of good faith back if they would at least confirm that they are going to put this on Mac, the Mac OS. I think that's a lot of people's disappointment right now, is especially mine. I have a MacBook. It's what I'm using to record this podcast right now, and I have a dual boot setup. You know, I can boot into Windows to play Arena, but it's not ideal. It's not what I want to do. I just want to be able to have a native client for my laptop. And if they would just confirm that, then I feel like it would help go a long way to improving people's outlook on how this looks. Because right now, with this coming out, it's pretty doom and gloom as far as actual platforms that Arena is going to be on. To be perfectly honest, and I think that sucks because we had this excitement with Arena coming out and the possibility and potentiality of them being on other platforms, and so far we're still on Windows, just like Magic Online. And it's like we have this. It's built in Unity, which is a extremely sort of easily portable to other platforms. Like they built it in the right language. So like let's figure out how to get it to where it needs to go, please. But yeah. That's everything for Valor's Reach. Again, it's something that was just announced today. Not even technically by Wizards of the Coast proper on their website. It was via Touch Arcade. But yeah, that's all we know. And I think it's going to be everything for our community subjects, community topics, as it were. Before we head on over to our next segment, do want to give a quick shout out to, of course, Comic Town.
Comic Town has a standard IQ on Saturday, April 20th. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why I laughed. Or do I?
I don't know where you're going with this.
Because it's April 20th. That's a number. Anyways.
Oh, I get it. Nice.
That was for all our people who that matters to.
Nice.
And there you go.
It's 420 if you're so like me. Nice.
Thanks. I was trying to be subversive. No.
Well,
anyways, Saturday, April 20th at a noon start time. It is a standard IQ. So
yeah,
come out, bring your standard decks. You'll get to see some of the cool stuff from the Mythic Invitational at that point. Mm-hmm. And come queue for the. It's crazy to say this because I feel like this is moving so quick because we're going to be in April in a week here. But you're running out of chances to queue for that.
I think I might actually be in attendance in this IQ.
That's right. That's good.
I don't know why I don't want to go back to Roanoke. Like I so don't. Like I'm not interested in going back.
It's about the tournament, not the city.
I know.
And I think
but you have to go to the city to go to the tournament.
You definitely have to be in the city for some amount of time, which is unfortunate for sure. Hey, our Airbnb was solid in Roanoke.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wow.
You didn't sleep in the child's room.
I didn't. And that is weird. I forgot about that.
Yeah, okay. So, like, you don't have room to talk. I slept on a bunk bed that had a mattress and a piece of plywood as the box springs, in quotes. The box springs was a piece of plywood. I thought I was going to break this bed.
Didn't Dave sleep in a room that, like, looked a lot like his daughter's own room?
I have not. You know what?
Had, like, a day bed and everything? Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
It was a nice place.
It could have better sleeping arrangements.
You're not wrong.
Anyway, so yeah, come out for the Standard IQ in April, yeah, definitely have a good time. Queue for that SCG Con.
Yeah. Morgan, can I take you into competitive?
Yeah, let's go.
I want to paint you a picture.
Paint me a picture. Okay.
Now, here's what we're gonna do because we have a lot of deck lists we could talk about. We did miss a week as well. We're not really going to look at a ton of deck lists today. That's not our goal. We wanted to discuss a card and some stuff going on in Modern currently because, as Morgan has implied before, Modern's probably not going to change until we get Modern Horizons. You know,
Yeah.
we have London as a possibility, but like Modern's probably set for a little bit.
And theoretically, it is important to actually point out that we are going to have a Magic Online test for the London Mulligan rule,
Right.
which is a little bit of a controversy because it's not just going to be Modern. It is going to be all queues that are actually going to be having this Magic Online test.
Oops, all
queues.
queues.
Now, the issue with that is there is a legacy GP that is going to be happening while this is going on. So you will not have a way to test for this legacy GP online because your Mulligan rule will be different, which is real awkward. I don't know if they've changed that. I haven't seen anything of them changing that or modifying how that should work. They should really consider changing it, in my opinion, because I think like, if you want any more confirmation that Wizards does not care about Legacy, this is just another nail in the coffin for that. But I think like that is super awkward. But it is good that we will actually have like results of this being put into place, which means that if there is something that is really broken, they will have some data around it.
They already do have data though too, so that's fair.
They don't have data from Modern. It's important that they've been testing this Mulligan rule with Standard and Limited
in 2015 when they had the data the first time. Yeah, it's already been tested
once again. But if they were just handing that Mulligan rule in Standard and Modern,
we're not.
Standard and Limited.
The actual quote that we have from WotC on it when they discussed this rule, Dave posted on our Discord before, but was that it adversely affected older formats.
And I think they still know that too.
But it's just new people working there, so you know. Anyways, moving from that, we also technically have a ban and restricted announcement in the last 2 weeks that was no changes. We didn't talk about it because it was not news. But
yeah,
GP Bilbao, first place. Is it Phoenix?
Yeah.
GP Tampa, second place.
Is it Phoenix?
Is it Phoenix? SCG Philly, Team Open, right? First place Modern.
Is it Phoenix?
Is it Phoenix? Day 2 metagame breakdown for Bilbao from number man Frank Karsten. The second most played deck was Humans, Interesting Love, showing up at a day 2 rate of 7.4%. Our number one deck was Is it Phoenix, showing up 21.2% of the overall day 2 metagame breakdown. Now, important to know, Modern is still Modern. There's like 20 other decks under that with various percentage, and Other is listed at 19.5%. We're not banning the Other, so there's that.
Yeah.
But a similar story is painted in the metagame breakdown for the Open as well, which the Day 2 metagame breakdown for the Open does it by actual deck lists, but the second highest deck was Dredge, with 9 players on Dredge in Day 2. Is it Phoenix? 19.
Yeah.
19 copies. So, I apologize. Philly was actually just a Modern Open, not Team Open. Sorry.
Gotcha.
That's Cincy this weekend. So, people are obviously talking about Faithless Looting has gotten a lot of heat recently. I want to talk about Arclight Phoenix as a card for a little bit. I've been high on that card for a long time.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I was high on it from the second I saw it printed, but I wasn't. But the first time I saw it used in Mono Red, I was like, oh, I gotta do this. And I played it in Standard and in Modern. If you've been following like deck submissions for SCG Cincinnati this weekend, there was literally a tweet that was being retweeted, which was like, it said Standard, and it says, why aren't you Modern playing Phoenix Legacy in all formats? So it was like, that was their deck list submission. Because you could play Standard Is It Phoenix, you could play Modern Is It Phoenix or Mono Red Phoenix, and then in Legacy, there's a Grixis version, there's a couple of different versions.
There's like a 4-color version that uses Land Grant as a free spell.
Oh my god, that's so good. You can play with Cabal Therapy, you can play with Buried Alive, so your team could be Team Phoenix.
Yeah.
We both played in regionals a couple weeks ago, and saw a room that was full of Phoenix, none top 8, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
But we've seen it affect the format in a weird way. Multiple decks running main deck pieces of hate that are so narrow that you'd say, well, that can't be good. But the format is so skewed that it kind of is.
Yeah.
It could just be Faithless Looting. Maybe it is. But is it Phoenix a problem now? Is it officially a problem?
Man, it's really tough, in my opinion, to come down one way or another. I've seen good arguments on both ends. I've seen people say that, it's not, it's not Faithless Looting that's the problem. It's the free spells. It's, you look at Manamorphose as being the problem. You look at all the other free spells that still continue to exist in Modern. I think that was Jim Davis's article. Is like
Metamorphosis isn't a free spell. You have to pay mana.
you get mana back, and you also get a card.
Yeah, whatever.
It's as as free as you can get without it just like costing you Phyrexian mana.
Just being a card that just said like cycling 0, and that's all it said.
Yeah, and it's tough. It feels like they got to figure out like there's something here. There's something in this color combination where they introduce something that pushes like blue red over the edge, and then they have to like stop it, right? You had this with Twin. You had Twin and Twin. That's all you could do in blue red. You could play, if you played blue red, you were playing Twin, and that was it. And it killed deck diversity, and then they banned Twin. So you had a bunch of crappy blue-red decks for the longest time after that, and then they print Phoenix, and now all you can do in blue-red is probably Phoenix, right? Like, you're not playing Blue Moon. You're not playing that deck.
No, I also think, to be fair, I don't think Blue Moon is always a metagame choice. Metagame does not support Blue Moon right now.
Right.
Give me all the Jeskai control decks back, and then I'll play Blue Moon against you. But
yeah.
It's not really, the big mana decks are going to beat you through Blood Moon most of the time right now. So
right. So it's like...
I'm not saying it's because of. I'm saying that deck may not be gone only because of Is It Phoenix.
Sure.
But like Breach is gone, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so you have to look at it being like, does Is It Phoenix kill deck diversity? And the answer, I have to answer back with a question: what other blue deck would be viable without Phoenix at this point in time?
Sure.
Maybe if you ban Phoenix, does the metagame shift to now those decks are good? I don't think so.
No, and that's okay. I know you're in a train of thought, but I want to go on 2 of those pieces because you fell right into my trap, and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, fantastic!
I had a big old grin on my face when Morgan started going there. One, I think that's one of the things you have to look at. The Blu-ray decks that did exist weren't good decks.
No,
Blue Moon did not have a good win percentage. Blue-Red, like Breach, was on a good deck. Like people just want to play Snapcaster Mage and spells. So, no, I think if you ban Phoenix, then you go back to every now and then you'll see a Delver deck. Every now and then you'll see a Thing in the Ice deck. Thing in the Ice is a card that's always been close and is now finally seeing some conjunctive pair here. So, no, banning them would it increase deck diversity? Maybe, but all those decks would be bad. A lot of people who have talked with us on Twitter recently have talked about how the games against Blue Red Phoenix, even though that deck it has some of those explosive draws,
sure.
But the games against that deck overwhelmingly are solid games of Magic. They go a long time. Everything is interactable. Like you can interact with everything. Their permission is soft. They are not doing something that is not beatable. They're just consistently good. The cantrips make the deck consistent. So you have okay gameplay. What the deck does is not broken in Modern, outside of like turn 2 or 3 multiple Phoenixes. But
sure.
Whatever. So we established the deck is good and is being played probably because it's just very popular as well. Like it's probably the best deck in Modern right now. But the best deck in Modern is a deck that's playing 12 creatures and a bunch of cantrips. Like you can beat that deck. Okay, and we've shown that you can beat that deck if you really want to. Modern is just a pretty diverse format. You get punished by trying to just beat that deck. Do you know what might bring deck diversity back?
What's that?
Do you know what other deck played pretty consistently fair games of Magic, but had a consistent win condition that turned it back and forth?
You trying to bring back Splinter Twin in this format?
I'm telling you that right now, if you kept Is It Phoenix and then brought Twin back, you would diversify Blue-Red by itself.
I feel like... I
am arguing that we unban Splinter Twin in the name of deck diversity.
I feel like...
This is why I set the whole segment up, Morgan. Do you see my plan now? You dance like a puppet. I walked you right into it. Welcome to my house of fun.
This is an interesting thought experiment that you have proposed. Do you think that Twin is just better, though? Do you think that the Twin is just on its face?
I don't think it is. Because I think the Arclight Phoenix attack plan is so consistent that I just don't think it is. I mean, we already see things like Rending Volley are currently playable and played because of both Thing in the Ice and Spirits and Humans. Like,
yeah.
You don't have to do, once again, you don't have to do a lot of jumping through hoops to be able, just like before, you don't have to jump through hoops to beat Twin. It did put you into bad positions, but like you can just play your game plan and beat Twin. The decks that got the most punished by Twin were the decks that had to tap out for their biggest those big conditions. Twin was one of those few decks that could play blue spells in Modern that could interact with your Trons. Because even Blue Red Phoenix doesn't do a great job with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think this is a fairly solid idea. We could go about banning and we talk about Faithless Looting, and to be honest, it probably is worth merit. But the two decks that are really playing Faithless Looting right now are Izzet Phoenix and Dredge. Mono Red Phoenix has dropped off as much as I love that deck. Grixis Shadow plays a number every now and then.
But yeah,
but they're not really doing it.
Yeah, if they lost it, they'd be like,
Pyromancer
whatever.
has not done well in the format. It pops up every now and then.
Yeah.
So you have two decks that are playing it. Both decks are graveyard-based decks. I don't think getting rid of Faithless Looting, I think, really, really hurts a lot more archetypes and chances than it does. And I think that's one of the reasons Ancient Stirrings has survived as long as people, because people thought that card should be banned. Because, I don't know who wrote, there was an article within the last 2 weeks that made a really good point about how you may not like the style of deck presented by, like War Prison or Lantern or whatever else.
Tron.
But they're, like, when you look at the Ancient Stirrings decks, they're diverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they are
that's
diverse.
true.
And when you look at the Faithless Looting decks, the ones I just listed, they're diverse.
Yeah,
They're diverse decks.
They are doing different
they
things.
They have graveyard things in synergy, but you could say that the other decks have artifacts in synergy, but they are different decks.
Yeah.
So I think, like, you can't ban off a diversity issue. If you're going to ban it off power level, maybe. But if you ban it on power level, you are going to cripple or obsolete two decks. I don't know if Dredge survives without Faithless Looting. It might.
100%.
I don't think it does, though.
I think it does. I think
consistently.
I don't think it's. But I think that's what they're trying to do. Dredge will still be Dredge. It just won't be as good.
But I mean, I don't know. I play against Dredge a lot. Dredge loses to itself constantly with Faithless Looting.
That's
now,
fine.
And incompetent players too. Don't get me wrong.
But
like
I
a
also
Dredge
don't
deck
think
that can't start on turn one without Shriekhorn is not a playable deck in Modern. I think consistently.
Sure, but you're not playing. Okay, you're not playing Faithless Looting. Again, that's a very powerful card. You're playing. You're going back to playing like Insolent Neonate and having just a worse deck.
Yeah, just a much worse deck.
But
for the sake of what? To stop Phoenix?
I mean, it's people to stop Dredge. I mean, like,
don't get me wrong. And like I said, like I think there are arguments for it as well, because the metagame has shifted to people playing very narrow cards in the main deck. I've seen some blue-white decks that are based around playing Rest in Peace in the main. Tron and stuff goes back to playing multiple Relic of Progenituses. But I think at the same time, like, a lot of that stuff is fine. Like, Surgical Extraction is now a $100 card.
Yeah.
But that card, like, there's been decks that have played that in the main deck for multiple reasons anyways. A lot of them are mill, but they still play it.
Sure.
And, like, we've seen decks, like, there are some matches with Amulet Titan where they can do with, like, Bajuka Bog and, like, having access to that. I think, like, that's one of the strengths of Modern, as much as, like, this can be a weakness as well, is that your decks can adapt and do these things. And I worry, because I think that if we keep seeing Izzet Phoenix go like this, we could see a ban. But I think that if we've looked at the last 2 years now of Modern, we have seen this wave. Since our last real banning, which was, what, Taxian Probe?
I mean, KCI, technically.
Okay, I'm sorry. KCI, I'm trying to think in that window. Yeah, KCI for sure. And that was a specific deck that's a style of deck they don't like. Yeah. Because if it was just based off tournament results, Izzet Phoenix should have been banned immediately. So,
right.
But when you look after Probe, we've Grixis Death Shadow was, people talked about banning Death Shadow. LSV talked about banning Death Shadow. That deck did win one of these GPs, but it died for a long time. And then Humans came around, and people were like, wow, man, now what are they going to do? Because every set they print new Humans, it's going to be too good. Humans was the second most played at one of these tournaments, but Humans has been largely gone. Then it was Spirits. Now it's Phoenix. The format does a good job of solving itself. And I think that I would err on the side of looking at these, looking at an unbanning, and going from there. Maybe I'm crazy, right? Some of Modern Horizons certainly was designed knowing that there are certain things that are very powerful in the format. Maybe it didn't predict Phoenix, but it certainly knows about Dredge.
It definitely knows that the graveyard, very popular place in Magic.
It's very crowded.
Very crowded. Oversold at times.
Well done.
Yeah,
that's a good reference.
There you go. They are aware. There are definitely cards that people have already stated they could print or reprint and put into Modern that could help with this. There are cards that they could make that are brand new and that they could introduce into Modern that could help with this. And obviously, we have a lot of graveyard interaction and hate that already exists within the format. And realistically, there are things that they can do. There are things that they can do to the format and be kind of weird with it if they really wanted to make it work. And I don't think that. So here's like the hierarchy, in my opinion, of things that could change before Modern Horizons, right? So because we have the Mythic Championship London first, correct?
Yes.
So
yeah, that's in what, April, right? And we're not getting Horizons till June.
June. So we have that testing period. Through the data in the testing period, they are pretty confident that X deck is now, because they get all the data. We
Right.
only see some of it.
That's
They
true.
get all
That's
of it.
true.
So they see through their data that one deck in particular now just like eats everyone else's cake because of this mulligan rule.
Did you eat dinner today?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so
I just love.
you had a lot of eating references.
That's
I thought
all right.
that was like your brain being like, "Hey, it's food time."
Food's great. If they see that, we see. I don't know if there's a ban window in between that, but we see them come out and be like, "Hey, through this testing, we've seen this." And now it's a tough window because a lot of people are obviously going to be using this opportunity to test for the Mythic Championship. But if there was something that was so degenerate, it would have to be. We're talking like skull clamp levels of like degeneracy or something like that, or just think about the worst time that it has ever like existed in like a degenerate standard. Probably worse than that for them to be like, we have to do emergency banning before we do this, or to call off the test, which I don't think they'll do. It would be far more likely to have like an emergency banning based on Magic Online testing. I think that is like less than a 1% chance, to be perfectly honest. I don't think there's going to be any bans before London. We see what happens in London, and then 2 weeks after that, that's when we see a ban. Or them announce we aren't going to pursue the London Mulligan. It's not going to be a thing that comes into place for Core Set 2020. We're going to go back to the drawing board. Thanks for participating in our experiment. So then I wouldn't see anything. Then we see Modern Horizons, and we see the cards in there. And then if we were going to see a banning, it would be sometime after that. But I have a lot of... I think that if you're going to be invested in Modern, and how Modern is going to look after... First of all, after we get theoretically War of the Spark.
I mean, they've got a lot of interesting things that happen there too.
And we're going to have Modern Horizons. So after these two sets, Modern could be a very, very, very different place.
It could. In this conjecture, I mean, it could also be the same place. So
obviously, but I don't think that you announce a Modern specific set without wanting to make waves.
I don't disagree with that. I think your timeline makes a lot of sense, regardless of what changes I might think. Like, I think Phoenix is safe for a long time.
Yeah.
The cynical person in me says Phoenix is safe for the same reason we talked for the Modern or for the Challenger decks. They don't want to ban this card while it's still selling packs.
Yeah.
If they're going to ban the cards, they're going to wait until because we're going to a new plane after the core set. So wait until we're going to a new plane. We get the focus off of this, and then do it. And then people who have bought them will have had a lot of time to play with them either way.
Right.
But I do think that like the fact that I think I can construct a pretty positive argument that right now to add something to Blue Red and even to Jeskai, Splinter Tournament banning would actually increase deck diversity. I think says a lot about Modern in general. I gave you the dire numbers when I painted this picture at the beginning, but in all honesty, like 20% is maybe rough, but you still had. You go look at these top 8s. Go look at the top 16s of these. You have a lot of decks. A ton of decks, and they're all still viable. I played Death Shadow Zoo at regionals. I went 4-2, and then I left because boy, it was a long day. But I played 0 pieces of graveyard hate in that entire 75.
Yeah,
and I beat both Blue Red Phoenix players I played against because the deck I had operated on a different level than what Phoenix is prepared for most of the time.
Right.
So you can pick a deck that can do well against that, and the metagame can balance itself. It certainly can. And like you said, 2 pretty large sets looming can still fix that. So I agree, no banning at all. But I do think like WotC's got to be paying attention to this.
Yeah.
we already know that Faithless Looting is on the proverbial hot seat, right? It's taken its place up on the Olympic medal podium right next to Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal. But I do hope they consider doing something like I said, and I'm selfish because I want to win, and I want to lead you into that trap. But I think if I can construct an argument as a player where I think this leads to more deck diversity, then I hope that WotC sees that those opportunities as well. And we know that they'd rather unban cards than ban them.
Yeah.
So I would hate to see Phoenix get banned. I would hate to see Faithless Looting get banned, though, too, because Faithless Looting has been a really solid card that's enabled a lot of cool strategies since it got printed, both in Standard when it was in Standard and Modern and Legacy. We do always have the possibility they'll give us the old switcheroo, and maybe they don't like the color pry break with Faithless Looting, and they ban it, and then they give us Careful Study in Modern Horizons. Like, that's something I've seen talked about as well. But
yeah.
This is obviously conjecture.
I think if you I think that's something that I want to get behind, but I think if they do that, then they make people who love Mardu Pyromancer
right.
really
No, I
upset.
agree.
Or they make you upset
they
because
make me upset because I like my Rhino Red Phoenix.
Exactly.
I think the people who are really negative about cards, and I think we're on record as being negative about Ancient Stirrings. The article I read, though, really did give me some food for thought on that, because I hadn't really thought about I think we consistently associate Ancient Stirrings with doing broken things, but Ancient Stirrings is fine in Tron, honestly. Ancient Stirrings is fine in, I don't like Tron either, but it's fine in Affinity. Like, that the fact that we have 2 now different versions of Affinity running around, possibly 3 if you count Experimental Frenzy as its own build. I think it's hard to argue that, and if I can point to 5 different decks that want to run Faithless Looting and do different things, you know what I mean? Like I said, Death Shadow to Mardu Pyromancer to Phoenix decks to Dredge, they're operating on super different axes outside of they like to use Flashback in the graveyard. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's going to be a banning soon. I would be surprised if, like you said, like that London Mulligan rule does something like that. I don't think we'll see a change for a long time. But I do hope that maybe we see a change in a different way than we're used to in Modern.
And there's just so many questions that Modern Horizons really... with that being a thing that we know exists, it is really hard to come to a definite conclusion about anything, regardless of how many numbers we see Is It Phoenix getting.
Agreed.
Just because that's... I mean... I would honestly be very, very disappointed if it's just kind of a dud. If they have this as being something that people have really, really wanted for a long time, and they just kind of drop the ball.
No, I think that's a different conversation.
Sure.
It is. But I agree with you. I think that I'm of the mind when it comes to like these decks and those sets too. But of these decks, where like when a deck is a top deck, right? Like you can go back and listen to us. Like I'm not hiding anything. We've complained about decks and wanted decks to be banned. But most time when we've advocated for that, it leads to we've talked a lot about Nexus of Fate. It leads to bad gameplay.
Yes.
Is It Phoenix being your number 1 deck? Like, I gotta tell you, that appeals to a huge group of people.
Yes. That's another point that I did want to make. Like, if you're going to tell a lot of people who fancy themselves serious Magic players, and maybe this is being a little bit judgmental.
No, I think you're right here. I think this line is correct.
And you tell them that the blue red deck is the emphasis on blue is the best deck. Well, I'm obviously a good Magic player. I'm going to play that deck
100%
because people have their own opinions about the color pie, and it's tier list, its hierarchy, which is influenced by the most powerful versions of Magic. It's influenced by Vintage, it's influenced by Legacy. And when you tell people that they can play blue and be successful, well, I fancy myself a competitive Magic player. I'm going to do that. And I think that is a very alluring thing for people. I also think that another argument that you can have for Phoenix is that, relatively speaking, the deck is cheaper than other decks.
That's pretty true. Well, you
still have Scalding Tarts. Scalding Tarts is a problem. But relatively speaking, there's still decks that are definitely far more expensive. It's cheaper than Humans. It's cheaper than Jund or Green Black.
Yeah.
And it is a deck that is easy to get into and learn. It has a straightforward game plan. It is still deep and you will still have a lot of learning to
lot
do
of
with it.
decision-making.
It is very heavy on decision making, but you can get in there, start learning it, and start winning games fairly quickly.
To add on to that, I talked about onboarding with the challenge decks. Blue Red Phoenix onboards from standard right now.
It's true. You have very similar game plans.
You have a number of shared cards currently.
Yeah.
Shock is your bolt. You have Opt quite literally, which is enabling the deck. You have, in some cases, Chart of Course.
Yeah.
You have Crackling Drake, Terramander, and Arclight Phoenix. Like, this is your onboard as well. So I think that WotC would have to look at it. And this is where I get scared, because I think it was Emma Handy this week who was saying, like, it's time to put Keranos back in the sideboards of these blue-red decks. And I'm like, yes, we are getting into mid-range matchups. You had Chandra Torch Defiance in the sideboard of yours.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'd love it. And, like, but here's the thing. The last time I was super excited about a blue-red deck, I was putting Mole Drifter in the sideboard so I could win, like, the grindy, like, Grixis Twin Mirrors. Right?
So
and then they banned
twin
it.
your Mole Drifter.
Yeah, but then they banned it. When we finally got to play Mole Drifter, they were like, no, this is too much. It's like, no, we finally did it. We've reached peak form. So, no, I saw that. I saw like Keranos, and I started so unconsciously nodding. I was like, yeah. And then I got scared. I was like, oh no. Like, wait, if we can play 5 drops, we're about to get banned.
I know this path. I've been here before.
I've walked it before. So I hope WotC pays attention to that and can right or wrong unban Splinter Twin to fix the format. Gosh,
that's a wild.
I just
sentiment.
love that
you need to write an article for legit and just to posit this.
I might do it, because when I was thinking through it, when I put it together show notes, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can walk down this. It's good. It's good.
I cannot in good faith be able to figure beautiful mind all of the implications that would have, to be perfectly honest. We needed like a room full of people to break down the computational impact that would have in my opinion. It's pretty deep.
Man.
You'll get a lot of players that I love Splinter Twin, unban it.
Yeah,
just see what happens.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I'll ride this to a wave of of just icon status.
Clearly. But I mean that's modern. I think it's awesome that we have a format that people care so passionately about and is somewhat accessible, and that people want to have these discussions to preserve it. And it's just a weird time for it, just because we have so much coming to it and so much happening around it, that it's hard to want to make these changes when everything is so in flux.
And again, I don't think it feels super unhealthy. I think we've seen, again, decks are making interesting card choices, but the diversity is still super high, and the player count supports it. So, if Is It Phoenix starts to lead to less attendance or things like that, then that's a problem. But the deck, I don't think, feels oppressive. Even when you see it a lot, you don't play against it and go, I feel like it's sad, because I play against Whir, and I immediately feel stressed out. I'm just like, all right, well, let's game 1. I hope I can race against this in Staring Bridge. Otherwise, we're gonna go straight to border games. I never feel like that against Phoenix. It's just a deck I can play against. So,
it doesn't feel like Eldrazi Winter.
100%. 100%.
If it's,
I guess is that more recent than Probe? That's more recent than Probe, right?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Probe was more recent. Probe was well after Eldrazi Winter. That was
really?
Yes.
Gosh,
it was.
I'm old now.
Because
I've seen so many Eldrazi Winters in my time.
Probe was after that, because if it was Probe was after that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, maybe the timeline makes sense.
At least I think maybe the timeline's wrong. I don't care.
No, I don't care. I'm not checking. I could not checking.
Not worth it. But yeah, so that is everything for this week's episode. We do have a couple of things coming up this weekend, though. We have Star City Games Cincinnati, which I don't think any of us are going to, surprisingly. So that's kind of unfortunate, but it's a team open. We just didn't get a team together. Literally have 2/3 of a team already, but oh well. And then we also have Magic Fest Kyoto, which is, of course, where GP Kyoto is going to be, and that's going to be standard. So plenty of entertaining Magic to be had over the weekend. Definitely, I know that Star City Games is obviously going to have video coverage, and then I imagine that there should be some text coverage for Kyoto, and potentially video coverage on the Japanese stream, if that's something that you want to watch. So. But that's going to be everything for us this week. If you want, you have multiple ways you can reach out to us. You can reach us via Twitter. It's YourEndstep is our handle, and when you add us, it's at YourEndstep. We also have an email address at YourEndstep@gmail.com, and of course, Facebook. You can look at us up at facebook.com/@YourEndstep. If you're listening to us, please feel free to leave us a rating or review on whatever podcast application you're using to listen to us. It definitely helps with getting better visibility and getting more listeners to the show. Also, if you're listening to us via Legit MTG, thank you so much for taking a peek at our show. And be sure to check out some of the other articles they have on the website, and of course the online store they have there. I also want to give a shout out again to Comic Town, our lovely sponsor. Check them out at worldofcomictown.com or Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook. Lastly, but most importantly, like we said at the top of the show, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/@YourEndstep. And again, we are looking at ways to improve how everything is currently shaking out with our Patreon. I know that it's something that we definitely need to fix to get up to date and really give you guys and girls some incentive to be a part of our be a part of our Patreon. But I do want to thank you wholeheartedly for our patrons. They are the reason that we can continue to do the show and be able to have pay for hosting, pay for equipment updates and everything like that. So we super appreciate it. So thank you again. But that is everything for us this week, and we will catch you next time. Have a great one. Bye.